This is a tricky question, not because of the workings, but because of the phrasing of the question. And we have to make sense of the words used in the question. And once we do that, the solving is very easy. So in part A, describe what happens to the distance between adjacent particles. Note my answer, there's this keyword periodically. So we will be able to write that the distance between the adjacent particles will increase to a maximum distance, which is the amplitude, and also decrease to a minimum distance. But the keyword here is the idea of periodic movement. So that's why the word periodically needs to be in. So check your answer on this. Because that's what wave does. The whole oscillation or vibration repeats. So part B, now determine the amplitude of the wave. We are given that the distance between x and y here is 6 mm. So this particle P actually moves towards the left until here and moves towards the right until here, x and y. And this whole distance is 6 mm. So once we make sense of this 6 mm, we notice that the amplitude, which is the maximum movement, maximum distance away from this center point, will be just half. Will be just this one or this one. If so, the whole span is 6 mm, half of it, which is the amplitude, will therefore be 3 mm. That's what I mean by we need to make sense of this phrasing. Once we make sense of it, the answer is very simple. Now, in part 2, calculate the frequency. Now, again, we look at this information. Time 2 seconds. It takes 2 seconds for all the particles to be back in its original position, in the same position. So every 2 seconds, the cycle repeats. So if I rephrase it in this way, you will be able to see that this 2 seconds is actually just the period, because every 2 seconds the positions reset to the same position. So if period is 2 seconds, then frequency is simply just 1 over t, get 0.5 hertz. Then lastly, for part 3, once you went past part 1 and part 2, part C is easy. Wave equation, note the units, 20 cm per second. And lastly, part 4 is tricky. Now, you are supposed to draw the position of all these particles at 3 seconds. We know that the period is 2 seconds. So how do we relate 3 seconds and 2 seconds? This is the way. 3 seconds is simply 2 seconds plus 1 second. 3 equals to 2 plus 1. Simple math. So 2 seconds is the period. 1 second is half the period. So we know that for every period, when 2 seconds pass, all the particles will be found back at the same position as before. So essentially, when I'm asking you to draw the particles at 3 seconds, I'm actually just asking you to draw the particles at half a cycle. There is half a period later. Because from 0 to 2 seconds, the particles will be found back in this black color dots position. So what happens in the next 1 second? So half a period later, 1 second later, where are the particles? So what happens every half a period? A particle at compression, after half a period, will become, the same particle will be at a rarefaction. So that's the trick that I'm trying to use. At half a period later, the original compression, the particles at original compression will now become the rarefaction point. The particles that were, at originally a rarefaction point will now become a compression point. So that is the trick that I'm using. This is the original compression point. Half a cycle later, 1 second later, it will be the same particle now will be the center of a rarefaction, so very far apart. Then this is a particle that was at rarefaction point. So 1 second later, half a period later, this same particle will be a compression point where the neighboring particles are very close to each other. So that is the trick that I've used. You still need to practice how to draw compression particles. Like if you know that this is a center of compression, how do you draw the neighboring particles? If you know that this is a particle at rarefaction, how do you draw the particles around it? So that part you still need to practice. So I suggest that you keep this screen on and you start drawing the position, these blue particles by yourself first. Then you just compare it with my answer.